In a 2019 interview with Juliana Enberg, Benita Eli reflected on her use of maps throughout her practice. Why do we map things? What do we map? We map what we want to exploit, what we want to know about. We don't map anything we're not going to use. Maps are a lens through which we physically comprehend our surroundings. They're a navigational tool, so they reconcile environment with the traces of our place within it. We use maps all the time, and yet we rarely encounter them as anything other than an exploratory or exploitative device, a projection of us onto the world, rather than a revelation of the complex relationship between people and place. In the wake of a warming planet, Benita Eli and Catherine Boch employ cartography as an artistic device to demonstrate that our connection to environment is neither symbiotic nor reciprocal. A pivotal figure in the Australian ecofeminist movement, Eli's Murray River Project maps the diverse geographical journeys of the Murray as it has faced ecological deterioration over 30 years. Marseille-based artist Catherine Boch sews together fragments of maps, aerial photographs, and town plans, stitching, painting, and drawing over these codifications to form new territories. While Eli maps the slow violence inflicted on a specific region, and Boch brings into immediate conversation a plethora of geographies, both artists posit cartography as a political and personal device. White Australians have historically used the act of depicting country as a means of asserting power and ownership over land. Australia's cartographic history is aligned with the mythopoetic devices of a colonial empire in Paul Carter's The Road to Botany Bay, and landscape painting is of course implicated in this mechanism. In fact, Janine Burke has argued that the history of Australian landscape painting may be viewed as a reflection of Australian history itself, with landscapes such as Glover's rendered in homesick sentiment, nationalist myth, and fear of the unknown southern land. However, depictions of country evolved. Body and Self Performance Art in Australia by Anne Marsh recounts and reflects on this shift, to which performance artists such as Eli were central, as environment was represented through experimental mediums, such as we see in the Murray River Project, and became concerned with ecological degradation. While Eli emerged as an artist when the environment was being artistically reconsidered, Catherine Boch was born as situationism and psychogeography were introduced to the art scene in France between 1957 and 1968. In Guy Debord's situationist theory, the term dérivé describes a journey open to the chance encounters a terrain has to offer, and the term d'étailement encourages the use of pre-existing materials to create new ensembles. As we can see in Untitled, Boch integrates this theory by sewing together cartographic support with a situationist abandon, stitching together universes that provide few road signs through which we may attempt to geographically ground ourselves. As Fabien Dumont argued in his 2017 essay, Ecofeminist Psychogeographer, in this context, the sewing machine may be viewed as a psychogeographic apparatus. Sewing, as Boch was quoted in Dumont's essay, allows her to be in front as well as behind, or to go through the work. By disintegrating her maps into jagged intersections and unpredictable crossroads, Boch allows her audience to adopt a similar positionality of being inside the work. Pascal Neveu's 2017 essay, An Archaeology of the Intimate, astutely describes encountering Boch's work like the entrails of a cave. We venture through gaps and cavities without spatial markers. And this feeling of exploration is also present in the Murray River Project. This photograph is from the 2009 iteration of Eli's work, but the project began over 30 years earlier, after Eli read reports on increasing levels of salinity in the Murray due to irrigation and deforestation. The Murray begins in Mount Kosciuszko and winds 2,520 kilometres west into South Australia, forming lakes, anabranches, and billabongs along the way. Eli documented her journey along the river's edge in a 1977 field trip, constructing grids from sticks and string that corresponded with the camera's viewfinder. By photographing these compositions, Eli mimicked the aerial photography processes that are required in map making. This iteration shows the beginnings of a slow ecological decline, but the damage against which Ely warned has evolved devastatingly by her 2009 field trip, which followed an extreme drought. Deposits of blue-green algae line the banks. Dead fish are scattered where a river once flowed. A drying bank becomes an oasis. The continuation of the project, wherein both field trips may be read together, creates a sort of objective witness statement as we view with undeniable certainty our effect on the environment. Through the work's durational capacities, maps of the past bear witness to the present, and we are left to imagine how the present might one day speak similarly to the future. The effects of climate change are also explored in Boch's practice. Works from the 2017 exhibition Monad drew together such environments as the Brazilian Amazon, the Syrian desert, and the Mediterranean Sea. The amalgams were laid in gouache or dark India ink, eroded with betadine and oil to form new textures, leaving permanent scars over the original cartography. In her 2018 review of the Monad exhibition, Lillian Davies wrote that in Boch's hands, territory becomes flesh, beautiful and violable. Much like a body or a border, Boch's works retain their traumas, and we are left wondering what cataclysmic event may have caused these blackened wounds. In the catalogue essay for Boch's 2018 exhibition Reverse, Elie Simon argues that Boch's introduction of red fabric and stitching was a means of mapping her own response to the violent world around her. Based in Marseille, a border city and welcoming port into which the Mediterranean flows, Boch's works undoubtedly respond to France's deafening silence in the wake of refugee crises in 2018. Of course, Boch has long been intimate with the vulnerability and fluidity of environment, as she grew up in Strasbourg, a city on the border of France and Germany that, in 1968, when Boch was born, could still feel the effects of falling under German occupation in World War II. When we encounter Boch's work on a literal level, we see various papers, some painted, some stitched together with wire support. And yet, it feels more like we are viewing the culmination of a process, infused with the emotion of the artist and her intimate relationship to the materials she invokes. At times, it feels as though Boch has fought with the sewing machine to create these works, and perhaps when we view them, we are overhearing the silence after or the remnants of this argument. Similarly, the Murray River Project reveals a great intimacy with place. Ely grew up in Robinvale and would frequently play and create on the banks of the Murray, sometimes sneaking out for a swim. Where we see a corporeal presence in these photographs, we may also see the echoes of Ely's childhood, and as the artist points out, consider the generations of First Nations people that have and continue to care for this environment, even as it faces immense challenges brought on by colonial practices such as farming. Like Boch, Ely maps her personal connection and response to environment alongside mapping the geopolitical challenges facing this terrain. And indeed, it is carried out with immense dedication over the river's colossal length. Nicholas Croghan has written of Ely as a scientist conducting a longitudinal study, a description which invokes a really powerful and personal image of the artist returning to this site again and again. By using cartography, both artists also implicate their audience in a personal way. It is impossible to view through disembodied eyes that which is so integral to how we navigate the world outside of the gallery. And as we attempt to grapple with what is familiar and foreign in Ely and Boch's practice, we map our own experiences of environment back onto the works. And it's uncomfortable because as our recognition flickers on and off like a switch, we confront environment not as an eternal, immovable force, but as transient, vulnerable matter. Here, space becomes time, whether it's the shifting banks of the Murray or the poetic topography of an imagined universe. Ely and Boch's works expose ordeals of growth and decay. By stratifying cartography with political and personal memories, both artists reinvent what it means to map environment.